All right, and I do have 3:30, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. So glad you were able to join us this afternoon. First thing I wanted to mention, you likely saw an email from us this morning about event date changes. But just a reminder, if you need to change your event date, please let us know as soon as possible. We do share your dates with our partners at the Duke Energy Foundation and with our staff members who plan to come out and support some of your events. And we just don't want any confusion for those who are planning to attend your events. So please let us know as soon as possible if you need to change your date. And we would ask that if you could type in the chat your school name and your date, just for an easy way for us to confirm that our records are up to date. So your school name, the date of your event, and the time of your event would be really helpful too. We just want to make sure that our records are up to date. So thank you so much for communicating that with us. And just in case you missed our first webinar, we'll start with a quick introduction. Again, my name is Elena Stout, and I am an education specialist with the STEM Centers of South Carolina, which is part of South Carolina's Coalition for Mathematics and Science. And with me is Tracy. Tracy, did you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yep, I'm Tracy Campbell, and my voice does not always sound like this, but it's just under the weather right
That time
now.
of year, yeah.
So I'm glad to be here and appreciate all the work that you guys are doing to support this program.
Absolutely. So this is what we plan to accomplish during our time together this afternoon. What to expect when you are welcoming guests to your event. We're going to take a deeper dive into the activities, which is my favorite thing. Discuss best ways to promote your event. We'll review our timeline for the rest of the spring, and we'll wrap up with any questions, comments, or concerns that you might have. Just a quick reminder for South Carolina STEM Education Month. It is just around the corner, starting on March 14th, which is also Pi Day, so it's easy to remember. The theme this year is Math Forward SC. So when you post about your Duke Energy Science Night on social media, we'd really like for you to include the hashtags that you see here at the bottom of your screen. We'd also like to invite you to attend STEM Day at the Capitol, which will be happening on April 2nd at the State House in Columbia. There's going to be award ceremonies, a press conference, STEM activities, lots of fun. So we would love to see you there if you are able to make it. So you will need to have a welcome table set up near the entrance to your event. And you'll want to recruit one, maybe two volunteers to help welcome your guests. This is where you'll display your welcome sign. This is also a great spot to have anything that you might want to hand out to your participants, like maybe the fun promotional items like the bookmarks or the tattoos that you found in your kit. You will also need to be prepared to keep a count of how many guests attend your event. This is information that we will ask you in the end of the year evaluation. So for anyone who has hosted an event before, do you have any insight on best ways to manage that? So what strategy do you find that works really well to help you keep track of number of participants at your event?
We always use a sign-in sheet because we're Title One and we use it as a parenting night for Title One. So we always use a sign-in sheet to keep track.
Yeah, great. Okay, yeah, sign-in sheet, that definitely works. Has anyone else ever used a different strategy?
We printed out all the students in alphabetical order instead of by grade level, and then a person just like did it that way when they came. We had like 3 or 4 people running the table.
Okay, yeah.
Elena, we use a punch card. We do the sign-in sheets as well because we're a Title I school as well. But we also give out punch cards whenever our kids come in. And, it has little 10 spots across the bottom. And every table has a hole punch. So when they go to that table, they punch that they've been to that. And then the kids will turn it back in when they leave.
Okay.
So we're able to keep up with what kids came, what activities they participated in, that sort of thing. So it's another way to keep up with who's participated.
Yeah, that's a great way to keep track of that. I love these strategies. All right, well, thank you for sharing.
There's a couple in the chat.
Okay.
Sign-in sheet with a parent survey at the end. And multiple greeters were helpful at the door to make sure the parents did get signed in and didn't just slip by the welcome table.
Awesome. Great. Thank you for sharing your insight on that. For those of you who have hosted before, it's really appreciated. So in your kits, you should have found an activity guide for all 10 activities. This is going to be a really helpful guide for getting set up for your event. So making sure you have all the materials, including materials that don't come in the kit. It also includes an explanation of why that activity is science. And it includes connections to the South Carolina College and Career Ready science standards. We included standards that are the best fit for each activity, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those standards should be a limit to who might benefit from doing that activity. So everyone is still welcome to participate in all of the activities. And because our theme is math forward this year, in addition to the science explanation, many of these activity guides will also include a math connection. For example, the Build a Bubble activity sheet will have information on challenging participants to make different shapes with their bubble wands, just for a geometry connection. Create a coaster includes information on using a stopwatch to time how fast the marble travels down the coaster, and then using that data to calculate speed for a measurement and data analysis connection. So those are just a couple of examples. Each activity also comes with an instruction sheet. These are resources that you can have at each station to guide participants through the activity. Some of them, like Build a Cell or Easy as Pie, are step-by-step instructions on how to complete the activity. But then you'll have activity sheets like the Build a Bubble instruction sheet that includes different challenges for participants to try out as they build their bubble wands. And make sure you check out the resources page on our website. If you go to Duke Energy Science Night page, scroll down and click the View Resources button, and it will take you to a page that looks like this. And this is where you're going to find digital copies of all of the printed materials that you found in your binder if you need to print extras. This is also where the Spanish versions of all of these documents are going to be held. There are also communication and marketing templates for you to use. This is also where you'll be able to access the webinar recording. So this is like the hub where everything is. So definitely check out that page and let us know if you have any trouble finding it. Oh, I forgot I had a little animation in there. All right, so here is your official list of all 10 activities that will be part of Duke Energy Science Night events this year. We have a pretty good variety of concepts, and we're also really excited about our brand new activities, Cosmic Coding and Easy as Pie. Some of the other activities might look familiar to those of you who have hosted before, since we have a bank of activities that get rotated from year to year. For this part of the webinar, we're going to briefly go through each of these activities to help you feel prepared to set up for them and make sure your volunteers or whoever is running each activity feels confident. If you have a question or a tip that you would like to share about any of these activities as we move through each of them, please feel free to speak on that or drop questions or comments in the chat. And Tracy, we'll see your questions and we'll make sure that we get those answered before we move on to the next activity. If you have not checked out the activity videos yet, I would highly recommend it. You can find the link to the YouTube channel on the Duke Energy Science Night resource page that we just looked at. I believe I also emailed out a link. Each video is about 3 to 7 minutes long. So if you have no idea when you will have spare time to watch these videos, don't panic. I watched them and I jotted down some of the major tips and tricks from each video, and I'll share those with you. And you should also encourage your volunteers to watch these videos. If you know who is going to be running each activity, you'll definitely want to encourage them to watch the video of their activity beforehand. So each video provides a run through of what materials you're going to need, including the materials that are not included in your kit. They show you how to do the activity or how to build the model depending on the type of activity. They provide some troubleshooting tips and information on the best way to set up your space for that particular activity. And they provide a really simple explanation of the science behind the activity. So our first activity is build a bubble. Participants will use pipe cleaners to build bubble wands and explore properties of soapy water, as well as geometry by blowing bubbles. This activity does require a few materials that are not included in your kit. You will need water and a container to pre-mix the bubble solution. So in the video, they show that they used pie pans, but you can certainly use anything that you have on hand. They also recommend that you mix the water and soap solution and test it out before your event, just to make sure that you have the right ratio for the mixture to work. It's also helpful to have a roll of paper towels here, just in case there is a spill. Does anyone who has done this activity before have any other recommendations before we move on, or are there any questions about this particular activity?
This is just a recommendation that I've done the past 3 or 4 years, but when I do send out a sign up sheet for my teachers to sign up for each station, I go ahead and put the link of the video on that sign up sheet. I put the list of the activity description on that sign up sheet so that they can go ahead and read it while they're signing up for their activity. And that's been helpful.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you so much, Amy. All right, we will move on to build a cell. Participants will learn about different parts of a cell while building a model. This activity also requires a few additional items that are not included in the kit. You will need pencils that will be used to coil the pipe cleaners or the chromosomes around so that they fit inside of the plastic eggs, which are going to represent the nucleus of the cell. You will also want to have some markers handy so participants can label the parts of their cells. And just a quick note about the materials in your kit for this activity. There was a mathematical error when ordering supplies. So in your kit, you should have 600 6-inch pipe cleaners, but you actually need 1,200 if you anticipate having 200 participants. So you'll just need to cut those 6-inch pipe cleaners in half to make sure you have enough materials. Anyone who's done this activity before have any recommendations? Are there any questions before we move on? All right, we will move on to cosmic coding. Participants will learn all about algorithms by creating a list of steps to guide the astronaut to each of the spaceships and then to Earth. So all you need for this activity are pencils and the cosmic coding handout. Your kit only has the English version of the handout. So if you do need the Spanish version of this, you can find those on that Duke Energy Science Night resource page. An additional idea that they shared during the video was to include a challenge for participants to see who can get the astronaut through the board in the least amount of steps, or maybe there's some other challenge that you can come up with for your participants just to take it another step forward. With this being a brand new activity, does anyone have any questions or need additional clarification on cosmic coding? All right, sounds great. The next one is create a coaster, and I think this is probably one of my favorite activities ever. It is so much fun. Participants are going to design, build, and test out a roller coaster made from plastic tubing. For this activity, you will need scissors to cut the tubing into 4 5-foot sections before the event, since the tubing comes to you in just one big long piece. You'll also need to cut the tip of the cone-shaped cup before the event, because this is going to serve as the funnel that participants will drop their marbles into when they get to test out their roller coasters. Also, when setting up this activity, it's helpful to be in a space where there are chairs or bookshelves or tables that can be used to prop up the tubing or to be used as an anchor point. An additional recommendation, if you have a large group at this station, assigning a role to participants could be helpful. So one person is responsible for dropping the marble. One person is responsible for catching the marble. And then you can also assign others to be part of the construction crew. So not everyone will get the marble through the coaster the first time, and that's okay. This is an engineering activity, which means they're trying to solve a problem by trying different things to see what works and what doesn't. So that's the fun and the challenge of creating a coaster. So has anyone who's done this activity before have any other recommendations? Are there any questions? All right, we will move on to easy as pie. Participants are going to use circles and ribbon to make a bookmark to learn all about pi. You will need to provide scissors at the station for cutting the ribbon. You will also need to do a little bit of prep work before the event. You'll need to cut out the bookmark templates and cut ribbon pieces about 4 times the diameter of the circle template. That way, participants can just come up to this station, grab a bookmark, grab a piece of ribbon, and they'll be ready to start the activity. And this is that kind of ribbon that gets really curly, and it might make it a little difficult to work with, especially for some of those younger participants. So it's recommended that you rub it against the edge of a table or something just to straighten it out a little bit. You can also find other size circles like plates or cups to demonstrate that no matter the size of the circle, you will always end up with 3 and about 1/7 of a piece of ribbon after measuring the circle. And again, this is a new activity, so does anyone have any questions or need further clarification? All right, hearing none, we will move on. Next, we have the Galilean Cannon. Participants are going to explore the law of conservation of energy by using the seismic accelerator that came in your kit. You will also find the goggles and the extra bouncy balls in the box with the seismic accelerator. So it's best to set this station up in a large open space like a gymnasium or maybe even outdoors, because there will be bouncy balls flying around. You'll also want to make sure that there's room for observers to be able to stand back and be out of the way. It's also suggested that you have other size balls like a basketball and a tennis ball on hand, so you can demonstrate how this phenomenon works on a different scale. There is only one pair of safety goggles provided. So I would recommend that the person who is dropping the seismic accelerator be the one to wear the safety goggles. Has anyone done this activity before and maybe have any tips or tricks on it? Or does anybody need further clarification?
Just definitely be in a gym or outside. It's a bigger area for this activity.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next we have garden in a glove. Participants are going to plant seeds inside the fingers of the disposable gloves, and they'll learn about what plants need to grow. And you can also let your participants know that when their seeds have sprouted, they can go ahead and plant them in a container with soil. So this activity does require a couple of items not in the kit. You will need a container of water, and small containers like cups will work just fine. They are just needed to dip the cotton balls in the water. It's also recommended to keep some paper towels at this station in case there's a spill. This one's pretty simple. Has anyone done this one before and have any tips or tricks? Or do we need further clarification on anything? All right, we'll go ahead and move on to our next activity, which is magnetic painting. Participants will use magnetic fields to create a work of art. So prior to the event, you will need to collect a variety of small objects. These can be metal or non-metal, so participants can test out what materials are magnetic or what might not be magnetic. It's also helpful to have either pencils or markers, something for participants to write their names on their plates so they don't get lost or mixed up with someone else's. Also, a little bit of paint goes a long way with this activity. You really only need a few drops of paint. If we add much more than that, the paper plate tends to get soggy. It's also helpful for participants to have an assistant holding on to the plate while they are using the magnetic wand to move objects around their plate. It's also recommended that you have the station near a countertop or an extra table to set the paper plates to dry. Are there any tips, tricks, recommendations if you've done this activity before, or do we need further clarification? All right, we will move on to ring gliders. Participants will use paper to construct a simple flying machine and experiment with the forces of flight. There's a little bit of prep work for this activity. You'll want to cut the full sheets of paper in half before your event. Also, just a fun idea, you can set out hula hoops or use masking tape to make a target for your participants to aim for. So this is another really simple activity. Does anybody have any recommendations if you've done this activity before, or any questions before we move on to our final activity? All right, well, our final activity is the straw flutes. Participants get to explore how sound is made in different pitches by constructing an instrument. The only item that you'll need to provide here are the scissors. Participants will need to cut their straws in half, and they're actually going to cut at a diagonal to construct their flute. That way each straw is a different length and will produce a different pitch. It also results in 2 straw flutes, which is kind of fun. Has anybody ever done this activity before that has some tips or tricks, or are there any questions about this activity or any of the activities?
I'll give another tip that I've learned in the past that we forgot to do last year, but I would have some sort of grocery bags, plastic bags, something that they can put all their materials in, because they will come away with a lot of things after they do their station. So something to gather everything in.
Yeah, lots of goodies will come away from this. So that might be something that you have at your welcome table to hand out if you're able to provide that material. Yep, good point, Amy. Thank you so much. All right, that was all of our activities. Pretty simple, straightforward. So in addition to all of the activity materials, you have probably also found some promotional materials in your kits. You should have flat tinker, pins, tattoos, bookmarks. We also have flyer and email templates available on the Duke Energy Science Night resource page that you can use to help promote your events, communicate with your families, or recruit your volunteers. So promoting your event and sharing what you're doing at your school with your community is really important. And I'd love to give those of you who have hosted an event before the chance to share with us how you have used those materials in the past to promote your events. Do you have any insight?
Erin has something in the chat while some of the rest of you are thinking about sharing, but she actually put it in the chat when we were talking about stations earlier, but she noted that one of the things she did for volunteers was reach out to an upper grade school, in this case, an IB school, and had volunteers that were willing to come help with the events. And one of the things that she did was set up a training station. So as they arrived early, they had access to devices to watch the videos on. So they watched them right there, right before they got ready to set everything up in the station and follow through with the kids. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Any other ideas for promoting your event or using any of those promotional items?
And I've seen some great examples where people created some hype with Flat Tinker, hiding them around the building, having students use it to write a story about Flat Tinker's adventures and STEM. Those kind of things really help create some hype. You can use pictures of kids with Flat Tinker on social media in advance of the event. So there's some things there that you could do to kind of build a storyline around Flat Tinker. He's modeled after Flat Stanley. Most of our elementary teachers know that classic. Um, so that's the idea behind that.
We also, on the day of the event, I have for sign up one person who is the photographer. So she carries that around and lets the kids take pictures either while they're doing the experiment or walking around and posing, but holding him as they go.
Yeah, I've seen other schools that have done like a photo booth with the
Yeah,
flat
I was gonna
with
say
them.
we did a photo booth.
Yeah, I love that. All right, well, thank you for providing insight on how you've used your Flat Tinker and how you've promoted your events in the past. It's really helpful for those who are just starting out. This is their first year hosting, so thank you for that insight. Just a brief timeline for the rest of the spring. STEM Education Month is just around the corner, and that means your events are going to be happening very soon, and we are so excited. Just a reminder that we will ask you to complete an evaluation by April 25th. That evaluation will be coming to you at a later date, so don't worry about it just yet. We will have one more webinar after your events to wrap up and get feedback from you. What went well, or what are some things that we might be able to work on for next year, because we really value your input. So make sure you have that date on your calendar. That's April 29th. It will be at 3:30 p.m., same as all of our other webinars. With that, I'd love to give you the opportunity to ask any last minute questions that you might have before we let you go for the day. Everyone feeling pretty confident? All right. Well, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at any time at the email that you see there on the screen. That's DESN@scSTEMmonth.org. And we are always willing to jump on a call with you as well, if that's helpful. So we are here for you. We're here to support you. And we really appreciate everything that you're doing for your school with the Duke Energy Project. So thank you so much. Tracy and I'll hang on for a little bit if you want to hang back and ask a last minute question. But other than that, wishing you the best of luck. Let us know if there's anything that we can do to support you, and have a wonderful rest of the week and weekend. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye, everyone.